I feel like if you're going to be watching this fight coming up this weekend at middleweight between Eryk Anders and the Iron Turtle, Jun Yong Park, you could probably use a Miller High Life. You're probably going to be listening to Metallica. You're going to be jamming. You're going to be driving. This is one of the better fights that's on this card. And yes, for Anders and Park, have they reached high highs in their careers? Certainly they have. For Eryk Anders, he main evented a Fight Night card against Lyoto Machida. So there is that.
And Thiago Santos.
It was a very close fight. Then he ended up with Thiago Santos in a fight that was a fight of the night, but he was the nail to the hammer that was, well, Maheta, Thiago Santos. But it is a very fun one because I look at this and Eryk Anders, while he has those impressive names on his resume, Jun Yong Park has a very convincing finish win over former two-time millionaire Ray Cooper III. Also a big-time fight early on in his career against Shavkat Rakhmonov that he did lose, but again, competition is what it was. And we're talking about that. Eryk Anders has a win over Brendan Allen, so there's also that as well. But I look at this as Jun Yong Park, very, very technical boxing. I know he did get kind of drawn into the wildness against Gregory Rodriguez last time out. That was a fight of the night, which was kind of odd because in the first round, it was a lot of 50-50. It was actually more so Gregory Rodriguez piecing up Jun Yong Park in the second round. First minute, Park goes off. Then it's 50-50. Then Rodriguez just absolutely goes wild. And he's able to get a standing TKO win. A good stoppage by the referee in that one, I gotta add to.
Rodriguez got big power in his hands, though. And that was the big difference in that fight. Rodriguez not only has power, he has the speed to go along with it, even though he is oddly old for his age. Whereas Jun Yong Park, there is sort of a wind-up to a lot of his strengths, where it's almost like, okay, I'm sitting down on my power, then I'm going to throw it. And I do worry about him doing that a little bit in this matchup with a guy like Eryk Anders, who is big for the weight class, but this is something I don't think he's ever gotten credit for. He moves pretty well on his feet for being the size that he is, and I always look at Eryk Anders kind of like Chris Duarte, and this is the example. Chris Duarte this season had graduated college. He went for all 4 years, played basketball all 4 years, then got drafted. He was pretty good right away. But the problem is, when you draft a guy like that and he's good right away, he's probably not going to progress that much throughout his career. You're going to get a finished product right away. The Eryk Anders that we got who did fight Lyoto Machida early in his career, who had that crazy borderline soccer kick KO against Tim Williams, is large part the exact same Eryk Anders that he is today. And that's sort of what I always worry about with Anders. He's a good grappler, but we never really see that side of him. He's someone who competes a lot in no-gi jiu-jitsu tournaments. That was really his claim to fame when he came to the UFC. But when was the last time you ever saw Eryk Anders go out there and out-grapple somebody convincingly in a fight?
When he fought Darren Stewart.
When he fought Darren Stewart, who's not a high-level grappler himself, I always worry about Eryk Anders when he fights someone who has any level of grappling in their back pocket, because a lot of his own takedowns come from his pure athleticism, not really from any style or any technique. And when he does fight those upper echelon grapplers, he can get held down on his own back. He's someone who does have a good burst back up to his feet, but if he does get exposed in some of those longer grappling situations, that's when we can see him get held down for long periods of time. And with someone like Park, who is he a wrestler? Is he not a wrestler? Every now and then he can go out there and secure a takedown. I do worry about Anders' ability to get back up to his feet against a guy like Park later on in this fight. Early on, I think he is explosive enough and athletic enough to have that burst to get back up to his feet. I just worry about that defense and whether or not it's sustainable throughout a 15-minute fight.
Yeah, I think we've seen a progression out of Eryk Anders since he's gone to Fight Ready. He's kind of cleaned things up on the feet. He definitely is a better striker than he used to be, but the tricky thing was his last fight against Andrea Muniz. Anders didn't look too bad for the first minute and a half. And then after that, he's standing not back to the cage, but around that black kind of line that's by the cage. Stands there with his hands right here, kind of leans ahead a little bit, and Andrea Muniz powers into a double leg, picks him up and throws him down, and then he ends up getting that wild armbar finish.
This is my problem, though. He looked good for 60 seconds in an MMA fight. Most fighters do look good in a 60-second period in MMA fights.
Not Alen Amedovski is also on this career. It's just...
My whole point is, you can isolate a 60-second period in anyone's career and they'll probably look good.
Great fight against Darren Stewart. You talked about the fight against Tim Williams. I mean, poor Tim Williams.
That was disgusting.
Poor Tim Williams. And for Jun Yong Park, again, he's come into the UFC, known as a boxer, double up, triple up on the jab. My favorite combination that I saw out of him, out of the deep dive of his tape, was against Marc-André Barriault, a fight in Busan, where he goes jab, right hand, right kick to the body, and it's just so fast when he throws it. And for me, Park, once he kind of gets nitty-gritty and into the pocket, then he can start to focus on some of those power shots like he did against Gregory Rodriguez, where he almost had him finish in that fight too. He really did have him wobbled. Gregory's hands came super low. Park was starting to tee off, and then he gets cracked, and then he kind of gets wobbled, and that's when Rodriguez is able to take over. It was a really, really odd one. It was a fun fight to watch, but you consider some of the losses. The debut to Anthony Hernandez in the debut for Park, beats Marc-Andre Berrio, beats John Phillips, beats Stephane Chukwe, and then loses to Gregory Rodriguez. Weirdest part about it is, you talked about the wrestling for Jun Yong Park. It's hard to know. Is it great? Is it bad? Because in those 3 wins, it's all about his wrestling, and then in the losses, it's a little bit of a mixed bag out of both aspects of his game. So I do like what I've seen out of Jun Yong Park in the UFC. Outside of the UFC, another win that's notable, one over Glenn Sparv. Out of Eryk Anders about 8 weeks ago, training in Texas with John Danaher and Gordon Ryan. So that was fun to look at on the Instagrams. But again, fight ready, the gym. I'm sure Henry Cejudo's got his finger on the pulse over there with his weird pillows. And also, Yuri Prochazka, I'm sure, has been in and around the wrestling room and the striking department for Anders, who's getting ready for a big fight. Prochazka is against Glover Teixeira at UFC 275. So I look at the odds for this one. Open to par. Anders now the underdog at a plus 175. Jun Yong Park coming in around a minus 220. We have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprised us they already do, and I'm actually really eager to see these ones because I'm kind of surprised the odds are as far apart as they are. I'm going to say over-under, though, 65% Jun Yong Park.
Under.
I'm going to say under, slightly under. 545 total votes, 62% Park. What is that? 88% by decision for the 38% that have Anders. 69% by decision, 24% by knockouts. Matt, what are you saying on the pick here?
I think Park's the steadier fighter in this fight. Anders will have these really high peaks and valleys with his output. He'll land a big shot, then he'll kind of wait. Then he'll land a big shot, then he'll kind of wait and stand out in the center of the octagon. I think Anders is going to be the one getting pressured a lot in this fight. And yes, he could sit down on left hand and drop Park, but I don't think that's going to happen. I just think the constant pressure and the threat of the takedown from Park is going to keep Anders sort of second-guessing himself on the back foot. And I think it will allow Park to start getting off with some of his volume. Again, I don't look at Park as being a top-tier striker by any means, but I do think the pressure along with the threat of the takedown at least is going to be enough to really open up some of the striking against Anders, who, again, doesn't really throw in combination. That's my big problem with Anders. He'll throw a nice isolated strike, then he'll kind of wait. Then he'll throw a nice strike, then he'll kind of wait a little bit. If he had a steadier output, I'd have a much easier time picking Eryk Anders, but I do like Park in this fight.
Park throws in combination, and he's not a, wild power puncher. He's a death by 1,000 cuts type of guy when it comes to his striking. I like his leg kicks as well. You look at the 2 losses for Jun Yong Park. His last time out, Gregory Rodriguez, he gets knocked out, and they have a knock him out, drag him out type of fight. Rodriguez takes him down a couple of times. And then in his fight against Anthony Hernandez, that's the story of the fight. He gets taken down 6 times and he gets finished. But the fights that he's won, he's utilized his wrestling. Eryk Anders is a guy that usually if he has a wrestling advantage or a grappling advantage over somebody, he utilizes it very, very well. But when it comes to his stand-up, you're right. He does like to throw some single shots, reset, get back into that long southpaw rangy style that he has, and it's an odd one. It's got to be... The strikes come from awkward angles, too, so it's hard to see for a lot of guys.
The fight I always go back to with Eryk Anders is the one against Elias Theodorou, because he complained that he lost that fight, or that he won that fight, sorry. He lost that fight if you judge it how you're supposed to score MMA fights. Like, he dropped Theodorou in a close round, which still only gives him a 10-9, and then he just sort of stood around for 2 rounds, and he'd land a shot here or there, but the output of Theodorou would just sort of overwhelm the small power shots here or there that Anders would get off. So, for Anders, it's been a problem for him throughout his career, and I did expect him to, I don't know, fix it a little bit at this stage, but I do worry about his lack of output in this fight.
Anders definitely the bigger fighter as well, so I can't wait to see these 2 guys weigh in on Friday, but going with Jun Yong Park here as well, both in agreement with the South Korean fighter. You let us know down below in the comments section, can Eryk Anders wrestle himself to a victory or land one of those big clubbing left hands? Or will it be Jun Yong Park, a picture of consistency, able to go out there and get a big-time win? I'm really eager to see this fight. It's one of my favorite on the card, and there are a few more fights left on this one that just... they get me ready. I'm waking up for a fight between Chidi and Njokuani and Dusko Todorovic. I'm excited about Santiago Ponzinibbio, who's taking on Michel Pereira, and in the main event, Holm, Ketlen, Vieira, big-time bantamweight implications. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.